Hey Fitheads, today we talk with Nicky Lyan, who is a calisthenics king. He's won all these things. He's been in the game for a long time and he has such great insights, not only just about like how to look cool and then do stupid human tricks, but also how how to live your life in a way that you aren't uh, getting injured or taking 3 years to do something that you were trying to do.
Yeah, he really saw somebody do a muscle up and was like, I'm going to try to do that. And also, as a side effect, I'm going to get really happy and have great perspective and be a really good person. Like it all
Yeah.
came from one muscle up. And I'm like, are you sure it came from one muscle up, dude? It sounds like you were a pretty good dude. Like, you know what I
And he's
mean?
talking about, yeah, that his early life, you'll hear about his history, was a really dark place. That muscle up was a transition, and then he's sitting in front of a ton of trophies.
Welcome to Total Fitheads.
Serious fitness for not so serious people.
Hey Nikki, welcome.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you. I'm excited for this one. Most of my questions are just, why do you look so cool doing things that are
I
cool?
appreciate that.
So, can you give us just a little background about how you got into calisthenics and your journey
Okay,
till now?
okay. I definitely can. Should I make it brief? I'll try to make it brief. It's long.
Yeah, somewhere
Um,
brief. Keep it like under 50 or 60 minutes if you can.
okay. I could try. Um, can I speak freely?
Please.
Yes.
Uh, cool. Yeah, so I was a big fuck up growing up, for a lot of years. Up until around the age of 24, I was just messing around. Like I used to be a skater. I've always been into like freestyle sports. So I was a skater growing up. I grew up in Lebanon. So for anyone who doesn't know where that is, it's in the Middle East. It's close to Egypt and Israel. So grew up there. And I was a skateboarder up until the age of 16 when I realized that I could never become a skateboarder over there. And then I kind of fell into not the best path of just, you know, getting messed up on drugs and alcohol and stuff. Did that for a few years. Like I was not really going anywhere with my life. And then I decided to move to my friend moved to Colorado from Lebanon to go to school. And so I decided to try to move out there just because I did not want to live in the Middle East anymore. I felt like it did not um, align with the stuff that I liked to do back then, which was, getting messed up and partying really hard and stuff. And so I got out of Lebanon, moved to Colorado, and there I got into a school. I got into a community college, but I started snowboarding. And so started doing a lot of that, got back into freestyle sports a little bit, but was still partying pretty hard because I don't know if you guys know Boulder, but I went to live in Boulder and it's like a party town, party school area. So did a lot more partying over there. And then I just found myself in a lot of trouble. I got arrested there, partying way too hard and just getting into a lot of trouble. Um, so got arrested, turned 21, um, like a few days after I got out of jail and spent basically 21 to 22 on probation. Couldn't drink, couldn't party, couldn't do any of that. And that's when I really had to look for something to do with myself that wasn't, you know, taking stuff. And that's when I started kind of getting back into sports. I tried skateboarding again. I tried martial arts. I did Muay Thai for a few years and I was like really into that. And I met my now girlfriend, Lucy, around that time. And then one day she took me rock climbing and I fell and I broke my ankle. And that put me in a really tough place. So I like completely like snapped my ankle in half. It was a rough injury, had to get surgery, had to get the whole thing like reconstructed.
Whoa.
And it, yeah, yeah. And that kind of was a very pivotal moment for me, like looking back, because I mean, you guys are familiar, like the medical system here in the States, like they'll just throw a whole bunch of narcotic painkillers at you. And I was kind of like immobile. I couldn't work out. And I was, had all these doctor prescribed painkillers, and I was in a like a dark place. I was 24 years old at that point. And that was kind of the turning point for me, where I was like, okay, I could either like just take all these pills and whatever, do that, or I could like just get in the gym and figure something out, like just get my mind right. And that's kind of where this whole calisthenics thing started for me. I just decided like, F that. I'm not going to take the pills. I'm not doing that again. And I got in the gym. It started with basic stuff, like just PT exercises for my leg and walking again and stuff. And then moved to like push-ups, pull-ups, and just general like weightlifting. And then one day someone showed me a muscle up. And yeah, that was kind of like
The
a big
gateway
moment.
drug.
Yeah, there you go, dude. That was the real gateway drug right there.
Yeah.
They showed me a muscle up, and I was like, "Yo, like that is the coolest thing ever. I'm gonna I'm
It
I'm gonna
is.
do that,
It
right? Yeah."
is. It really is.
And so I was like, "Yo, I'm gonna do that." And I get up on the bar, and I tried to do it so hard, and I just could not do it. And it was one of those moments again where I was like, okay, like I could do what I've done my whole life, which is say, oh, this is not going to work out for me, blah blah blah, or I could just keep trying and try to figure it out. And this was back in 2016 when there wasn't as much like calisthenics was on social media, but it wasn't like it is today, where you're like just scrolling your feed and everyone's teaching you how to do this and how to do that, and ebooks and so on and so forth. So I kind of had to like figure out how to hack it on my own. So I kept getting after it, just getting after that muscle up, getting after that muscle up. And eventually, like 2, 3 months down the line, I got it.
I'm sorry, did you say
And
years? 3 years down the line
no,
you
two,
got it?
two, 2, 3 months, 2, 3 months.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
um, I don't know if that's, considered fast or slow.
I
Yeah.
would call that fast.
I would call
Well,
that
thank
fast.
you. Well, thank
That
you.
was 12 times faster than me. Exactly.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm flattered.
Well done.
But like I was really getting after it, and like by no means was doing it the right way. Like now looking back 6, 7 years later from where I'm at now, I was just trying to get my body over that bar, and when it happened, it really just it changed me. It changed my whole life. It wasn't like, oh, my whole life is different, but it did in a certain way, like teach me something that I had never been taught before, which is just kind of the power of like just doing something over and over again, and even failing and trying it again and failing and trying again, and then eventually getting it kind of unlocked that part of my brain that was like, yo, like I did that, like what else can I do? And the gateway drug, it snowballed from there. I was just like, okay, let me try to handstand, let me try to do this, let me try to do that. And long story short, that's how I got into calisthenics. um and then I just kept going deeper and deeper down that rabbit hole. Eventually moved out to LA because I in Colorado I didn't have anyone who really did that, like
Mhm.
no one really. And so I would scroll social media and I saw that a lot of cool people were in LA. So I came out here for a holiday to try to train at Santa Monica or Venice or one of those like, kind of hub places. And I met so many cool people, just on a random Sunday, that I was like, dude, I'm just, I love this. I don't know what else I'm doing with my life. Like, I'm going to be working some random job in Colorado or working some random job in California. So might as well go to California. Moved out to LA. And honestly, dude, it was kind of one of those things where, dude, I've done a lot of stuff in my life where I would try to do things and the doors felt kind of closed. And this was one of those things that felt like it just flowed, like the doors were open. I would try whatever I would endeavor to do. It was like there was wind at my sails. So I just kept going with it and going with it. And, fast forward, like I got better, some comps, lost some, won some, got better and better, started traveling and competing and, ended up competing like in many countries and many states. And here we are today. I mean, amongst other things.
What
Thank
a
you.
journey.
Before we go any further, do you want to point out any trophies that you have so conveniently pointed the camera
Oh,
towards?
well, this is where I sit and do most of my
Oh,
work. So the
several.
laptop, a few trophies here. Yeah, these are like the ones that I guess I cherish the most. This is Brooklyn. This is Lebanon. I actually went back to my country in Lebanon and did the national championship and won that over there. This was the Venice Beach Championship. Um, Venice Beach. I forget what this is. This might be Dubai. And and this is the Netherlands. So just different comps that I did. I feel like my peak competitive um career, so to speak, was like 2018 to 2020. I traveled a bunch of places and competed and kind of did that. It's been a good time, dude. I mean, all these trophies are just like, I guess, here to remind me that like you could do cool stuff. Like I never really felt like exceptional, when I was younger. I still don't necessarily like, I just like to remember that like, bro, if you set your mind to things, you can do them.
Yeah. It feels
Uh,
like you talk about the transition when you got the muscle up, but there definitely had to be a transition when you started just working towards it. That feels like you're a different person then. When
uh-huh,
every day I'm gonna go after this.
uh-huh. I would say like I just really didn't want to go back to like what I was doing. I didn't want that. Like after, I mean, I kind of glossed over my life, quickly, but the reality is like I had some dark times, dude. Like moving to America alone, and then just getting arrested in America. And, like that stuff it was dark times for me. And I just it kind of gave me that like, okay, this is what I don't want. Like everything I'm doing is,
Glad we figured that out.
yeah, like
Yeah.
everything I'm doing is taking me where I don't want. So
Yeah.
that kind of, sometimes you don't know what you want. I didn't know what I wanted. I didn't know I wanted to be a professional calisthenics athlete and then do social media, whatever it is I'm doing now. I had no idea. I was fueled by what I didn't want to do, and I had a lot of energy to give, and I just put it into this. Like calisthenics just kind of gave me a channel.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was like me chasing after that muscle up was literally just me putting my I don't want to go there energy somewhere. And it just amounted to this, over time.
It sounds
That's
like a
awesome.
big part of it was the community too. Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. Um, absolutely. Look, I don't know much about other sports, but like I've never been a part of other sports. Like I used to skate and skating was cool. It still is. I find it a really cool sport. The thing that drew me to calisthenics, I would say, is it's just insanely accessible. Like you need nothing. You could do it right now. Like if you wanted to do push-ups, you just stand up and do some push-ups.
What? Oh my goodness, what am I doing here?
And I think there's something about that which it's just attracts a lot of different types of people. Like you go to any random calisthenics park and you're gonna find people doing their reps. They're doing push-ups, they're doing dips, they're doing their body weight squats, etc. Some people are doing the crazy stuff, the flips, the spins, the holds. Everyone's kind of the same. Like I come from the Middle East, but I've been in America for 10 years. I've traveled and competed in so many countries and been to parks and calisthenics like spots everywhere. And everyone's different. I've met kids that grew up in the burbs with mom and dad and the good life. And I've met people that are just fresh out of state prison, like just done a 5-year bid. But you see them like on the bars and everyone's kind of like the same. They get excited when they do their first muscle up, they get frustrated when they miss their, this or that. And um so it's a really cool community. and I ended up meeting a lot of different people who shared, the same love for calisthenics and were very open about just sharing their little tips and tricks and stuff like that. And that contributed a lot to, I guess, my progress.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
awesome. Now, I would might already be a little too late, but why don't, for some of the listeners who might, or especially for audio listeners,
Uh-huh.
can you define what is calisthenics, what goes into the sport of calisthenics, and then because I think that's, you can go to a playground and
Uh-huh.
mess around on the jungle gym, and that's not it, or is it?
Uh-huh.
How
Uh-huh.
would
Uh-huh.
you
Got you. Got you.
define it?
Okay. So it's weird because calisthenics is, there's like the umbrella definition of calisthenics. So calisthenics, if we were to have a little history lesson, is one of the oldest forms of training for humans. It comes from ancient Greece. It comes from the word kalosthenos, which means beauty and strength. And it's the most basic body weight training movement, certain movement patterns like planks and push-ups and squats and stuff like that. And then obviously, like, it's been around since the days of ancient Greece. In certain ways it developed into like gymnastics, and other sports. It's also, for the, like, to this day, it's like, I think the standard for all like warriors or armies or militaries, they all have like a standardized test that involves pull-ups, push-ups, dips, etc. And like what I do, which is kind of, they call it street workout or freestyle calisthenics, is the resurgence of it that kind of really started. It kicked off in 2005 with YouTube, when, well, the theory goes that it started in the American prisons. Like, this modern version of calisthenics started in the American prison system in the 90s, because there was like a federal law to remove all the weights from prisons. And so inmates had to resort to like calisthenics to get, jacked and strong and
Yeah.
work out. And then when a lot of inmates started coming home, from prison, they would bring this calisthenics with them to their neighborhoods. And the culture was born like that, in parks and in neighborhoods, and from people, coming back from prison. And then in 2005, it blew up with YouTube. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with Bar Stars and Hannibal for King and like all these
Mm.
old, like the OG modern calisthenics guys. But they really popularized it with YouTube. And then social media just took it to another level. And then it went from, your normal pull-ups, planks, burpees, blah, blah, to these more, I started incorporating aspects from gymnastics, like bringing in these isometric holds, like planches and front levers and stuff like that, and the high bar routines from gymnastics. But I mean, maybe to some gymnasts, we're like a bastardized version of what they do. But it's the most accessible, like, for people who are kind of into like body weight fitness and into like freestyle sport. I would say it's where gymnastics meets like the streets, is what we do today, which is, you go outside, you find a bar, and you you get your workout in. But now it's developing even more into these like crazy routines and holds and the stuff that you see, on videos and stuff like that. So that version of calisthenics, freestyle calisthenics or street workout, is what I competed in, what I've been doing. But that's not to say that I still don't do basics. Like, I do my reps every day. I do my pull-ups, I do my push-ups, I do my dips religiously.
Yeah, I think if gymnasts are getting mad about what you're doing, then I would also think a lot of tennis players would be getting mad at pickleballers, and you know
Oh
what I mean?
yeah.
It's just like, dude, whatever, who cares? It's another
Yeah.
game. That's all.
Exactly. It's the I love to tell people, it's like, like, you ever watch like slalom skiing on in the Olympics, right? Versus the X Games. Like, you have big
Yeah.
air and that type of stuff. So it's just freestyle. Like, gymnastics, dudes, I have mad respect for gymnastics. I'm not very much that much into the rules, right? The leotards and the pointing the toes and the stuff like that. And I wasn't fortunate enough to be put in gymnastics when I was 3, 4, 5 years old. So I kind of had to find the sport when I was like 24. Uh, anyway, I hope that explains it.
Yeah, but you're a lot stronger than those. There's dumb 15, 13-year-old girl.
No, 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 dude. Honestly, some of them are crazy at what they do. And I do think for a few years it was the lines were very blurred. Like calisthenics was kind of catching up to what gymnastics had done. But if you really look into it today, and if we were to get into the nitty gritty of the skills and the stuff that's being performed, I think calisthenics is finally starting to kind of take on its own thing where it's like, yeah, it looks like gymnastics from the outside, maybe. But really, if you look into it, like it's different. It's like pickleball and tennis. That was a great comparison.
And when you talked about first starting, you were saying like you weren't doing it the right way. Is there the right way that they're judging you on and then handing you that giant cup?
I mean, so when I started, I was just trying to unlock my skills, and I definitely think that there's a way to practice to train your skills. See, the thing that gymnastics does, excuse me, a little bit better than calisthenics, and it's because gymnastics has this history behind it and this like very dogmatic way of coaching where they will train you for a skill for a long time before you attempt it.
Hmm.
So they'll teach kids how to do like a hollow body before they even try a handstand, because you need to know how to, for proper form in a handstand, you need to know how to hold a hollow body. So they kind of build the whole thing before they try it. In calisthenics, because it's mostly just people going out and watching videos and wanting to try stuff, it's like you're trying and trying and failing and spending so much time trying skills without necessarily building the fundamental movement patterns you need to achieve that skill. So that's kind of the disconnect with calisthenics. And I'm not saying gymnastics is better. I think there's like a nice little middle ground, because like the gymnastics method for me, it's kind of boring. It's like, dude, I have to train this so many times before I even try it. Like
Yes.
that's, like, come on.
Mm.
And so there's a middle ground where it's like you can try the skill and get that little bit of dopamine and a little bit of joy, but you also have to like work certain prereqs so that you can get the skill easier and not spend 2, 3, 4 years trying to get a skill.
Well, that's the opposite of every single person I know today. That's like, no. What do you mean? I want to, I
Yeah,
want to just do it now. What are you talking about?
same here, dude. I've like handstand took me so much longer than I've taught people to handstand so much faster than I learned how to handstand, because I would just try to kick up to a handstand for like a year. I was just like kick up to a handstand, kick up to a handstand. And it's like you don't realize like, no, you should practice against the wall. You should figure out how to balance. You should figure out how to stack yourself in a straight line. You should like there's a lot of little things to do. But to answer that question you had asked previously, in these competitions, it's a little more advanced than that. In these competitions, it's mostly battles, so they'll pit like athletes against each other, and then it's kind of like routines, but I don't want to call it routines. That's very much like gymnastics. It's more these improvised like battle routines where you're going head to head with someone and they're kind of doing their best flow or their best combo, and then you got to outdo that. So it's kind of where maybe like a UFC fight meets like gymnastics in a certain type of way.
Meets a rap battle.
Yeah, for example. Yeah.
Is there times where you're actually changing your routine based on what they did because you're feeling it in the moment and you're actual improv, really?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say at the beginning, I didn't used to think like that because I just didn't have the repertoire for it. Like I didn't have the tricks in my bag to kind of on the fly be like, no, I got to do this, I got to do that. I would just kind of prepare like a few routines and be like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, and I just stick to the plan. But over time, as I started participating in more comps and battling just different people from around the world, I'd be like, no, like you need to battle the person and their routine. And you need to kind of play it's a game at the end of the day. Like you need to check the right boxes. The judges are looking for certain things. If your opponent is lacking in those areas, you got to outshine them in those areas. If he's doing something you can't do, you got to kind of do something completely different to take the attention away. It's a game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah.
I think in one of your videos you were talking about how, I think it was how to grow the sport. You were talking about the types of competitions there are, the types of formats there are. Is head to head the best format, or if you were the lord of calisthenics, the commissioner, how would you set up a competition?
That's a tough one, dude. Like a lot of great minds out there are trying to figure that one out. I think a mixture, like nowadays I don't compete as much anymore. I'm more into judging the comps and just kind of being an adult, and enjoying these trips, because you go on all these trips to compete and it's like you're going to these awesome places, but you're kind of stressed out because you're competing. So judging is a little bit cooler because it's just a vacation. But that being said, some of the best comps I've come across are kind of a hybrid where a certain amount of people will do a routine, like an exhibition style routine, and then the best of the best will be chosen and pitted against each other to see who's really got it like that. So I would do something of that nature. But that's you're touching on one of the biggest issues that the sport is facing right now, which is figuring out the right format so that the athletes give their best performance and the audience kind of gets the best out of it.
Yeah. And how much does fatigue go into something like that? Because I remember for a long time, I thought the idea of penalty shots in soccer was stupid, because I was like, no, just keep playing soccer until, you know what I mean? You just keep playing, and then you don't do a completely new game to decide this first game. It's like, you don't, if it's tied at the end of basketball, just play another quarter of basketball. Don't do a free throw shot contest. I was like, this is stupid. It's a different game. But then someone explained it to me, which was that, like, well, it's a skill. It's a very important skill in soccer or football. And if we keep playing, the players are so tired that the level of play just plummets, and then it's even dumber because you win on, some guy whiffing or some guy falling, or it's huge unforced error just because of fatigue and
injuries.
Yeah, and injuries, that's a big one. So do you think that plays into it? And also, sort of as a follow-up, how long can you go can you calisthenic for?
Yeah, that's a good
I got
question.
one muscle up, that's it. Then I would wait a week.
That's a great question, which we are trying to figure out as well. It's kind of, dude, it's one of these sports that's it's not in its infancy anymore. It's kind of in its like teen years, where it's figuring itself out, so to speak. Like we got some comps, right? Like Battle of the Bars, the biggest comp, the one in the world championship of that is in Dubai. That one really pushes athletes. Like it puts them against each other in these 9-minute battles, where it's like 3 minutes, rest for a minute, 3 minutes, rest for a minute, 3 minutes. That 1 minute rest, that just goes by like that. That doesn't exist. So so yes, let me backtrack a little bit. It is extremely hard. Like you'll be doing calisthenics in the park and you'll hit a routine and stuff, and then you'll chill. You'll talk to your friends, you'll be all hyped up, you'll watch your video. So going back to back to back is a whole different game. And that's why there's so much respect for these athletes that can really put it on the line and do what they do on social media, in real life, under pressure, in front of people, etc. So to a certain extent, like pushing and seeing people's endurance is necessary to see who is really about it. But there's also, the same way you said for soccer, there's kind of a fine line where at a certain point, it like the first thing that it just gets cringy. Like it's not as nice to watch anymore, and it's like everyone's struggling, and you just lose the audience. That's like the least of the bad things, and then it gets progressively worse. Like people can get hurt, and the performance just goes to shit. Sorry, excuse me, but so there's a sweet spot. I don't know what the sweet spot is. I've seen many formats. I think we will figure it out, and I think it's crucial to figure it out because I work with WCO really closely, like the World Calisthenics Organization, Battle of the Bars. But I really push to cut down those 9-minute battles because on one hand, yes, I get it. Like if someone's throwing down on minute 8, they're freaking sick.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but it's like 90% of the time it's not that. And so there's this constant like battle between the forces at play organizing these comps that's like, okay, do we want to keep it there so that just the level just gets that high, or do we want to kind of slowly titrate up or figure it out? Because also like you'll realize that we need the audience, right? Like the audience is usually really amped up when stuff is really amped up, and then as stuff starts to dwindle, you don't want to lose the audience because you need that for the sport to grow.
Mm-hmm.
So, interesting question. I don't know if I answered it.
Yeah, the interesting that the audience element. I guess I just never think about that for sport, but it is really super important. Yeah, cool. So when you were talking about kind of skipping over movements, there's gotta be like a list, and do you have them all in order? And is it a very clear order that you do this one's harder than this one, then this one, then this one? Or is it kind of vague that you would get this one before this one and somebody else might have a different journey?
Definitely vague. There is a certain order, right? And I mean, you guys are asking the questions, like those are the questions that are in
shucks, thanks.
Yeah. No, like in the ether of calisthenics, like if these questions had answers, we would be, I think, further along, right? These are the questions that are in the air right now. And ranking those skills, in this like kind of pyramid or reverse pyramid order. It is kind of a reverse pyramid because everything starts from the basics. So I'm gonna try to answer your question, do what I've been doing. Everything starts from the basics, level 0, foundation, whatever you want to call it. And that's planks, push-ups, hollow bodies, dips, pull-ups. And you need a certain amount of them to be strong enough and kind of healthy enough and have like the right basics to move on. So I would say level 0 is body weight rows, dips, push-ups, pull-ups, hollow body, toes to bar. And there's a few more I could name, body weight squat, etc. And then once you have a certain amount of these down, and obviously maybe for females and males, it might be slightly different. Usually for me, if I'm training someone, I'm going to tell them you have to have 10 pull-ups to move on. You have to have 15 dips. You have to have 20 push-ups, 20 body weight rows, 30-second hollow body, 10 toes to bar, and maybe a couple skin the cats, and like 20 body weight squats, right? Like once we get you to your numbers, then I would say level 1 of real like more advanced calisthenics or intermediate calisthenics would be working on your muscle up and working on your handstand. Those are like the natural.
Specifically bar muscle up, yes.
Bar, yeah, I would say bar muscle up is a little more advanced than ring muscle up, but you could do both. I wouldn't, like this is going to be a little controversial. I think
Let's
ring
go.
muscle up. Yeah, I think ring muscle ups are actually way easier on the body than bar muscle ups. Even though
you heard it here, folks.
Yeah. Even though bar muscle ups, a lot of people get bar muscle ups first. I did too. I think as you move forward, you'll realize that the rings, um, they give and take with you. You know, if you need to find a sweet spot that's a few inches rotated inwards or outwards, they're gonna give and take with you. The bar is not. So over time, um, people who are trying to really muscle their way through a muscle up, will end up the rings are going to end up being more forgiving on their joints than the bar because the bar is not moving. So you have to work around that bar versus the rings you can go through your chest, you can rotate in certain angles. It's going to forgive you a little bit more. The bar, you have to go around it. You have to get your wrists over. So, um, it's hard for me to say. I would say in order of difficulty, people usually get the bar first, but I think I would put bar and ring like in the same level
And you
myself.
mean strict specifically, right? Not kipping.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'll be honest with you. I don't know much about like the kipping techniques. I learned kind of the calisthenics way.
Yeah.
But that's not to say like I think CrossFit's really cool. Like I think the especially the idea behind CrossFit of mixing all these different types of training is really cool. I just never learned to do my movements in that way, like the handstand push-ups and the muscle ups and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I would say if I were to give like a level one after the basics, it would be handstand and muscle up. And then obviously a few other things like L sits and crow. Like there's so many skills, but I'd say handstand and muscle ups are like need to be developed before you get into the more advanced calisthenics, which is like the leverage based stuff. So planches and front levers
Right.
and back levers and stuff like
Stuff that looks so cool. What's the
that.
coolest thing you can do that looks easy?
Coolest thing I can do that looks easy.
Like you put a ton of work into it, and then people are like, "Yeah, that's probably hard, maybe."
Yeah, I would say planche. I would say planche is the most
Uh,
like people who've never tried it, they just don't get like they're just like, oh,
how tough it is. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, oh, whatever. And then it's weird because then people who've tried it, like actually tried to do it, they get it.
Yeah, it
Right in
just
their
takes
face,
one.
they get it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So,
It's
wait,
so
follow-up
hard.
question. What is
Uh,
the easiest thing you can do that looks cool?
I would
So something that didn't
say
take much work and everyone's like, "Wow, look at that."
I would say a back lever.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say a
That does
back
look
lever is pretty achievable for a lot of people, and there's a lot of cues to make it easier and easier on yourself. And people just think it's as impressive as a planche, but they're like just oceans apart in terms of how much
yeah.
work goes into them. Yeah.
Hold on, writing down back lever. Just trying to do something
Yeah.
with the least amount of work.
Uh-huh.
Okay, cool. So let's say there's someone who just decided to do ring muscle ups. How long should that take?
If you are training the right way, well, it depends. It depends where you're starting from. Are you starting from
Also,
you have
this is a bit of a trick question
What?
because Allie just did this. And so she
mm,
has a certain amount of time in her brain. She
Oh
has a
yeah,
real time
the
that it
correct
it
amount.
took her.
okay.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
you know
I'm
what I
getting
mean? It's
set
not
up.
like it's not a totally unbiased, but
Okay,
Also, I
so
did
let
it
but
me
because
yeah.
Max bet me, so this is his fault.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Where did you start from? How many pull-ups did you have?
I think my PR was 8 on the bar, not rings. Rings was like 3, and then we're
Eight
definitely
bar,
not high enough.
8 bar pull-ups. Were they strict or were they like
Yeah, strict.
strict bar pull-ups? And were they like chin over?
Yes, but not chest to bar.
Okay, all right, hands bar. Okay. Um, did you know how to false grip?
I learned.
You learned how to false grip. Dude, honestly, like obviously to be honest with you, it's going to depend a lot on how you trained and the drills you did. I bet that if you had all the right drills to do, you would have gotten it faster than you did. Um, but in general, if someone who did not know what to do, had 8 strict pull-ups. Fuck, that's hard to answer, dude. What, like anywhere between
It was a rhetorical question.
anywhere between 2 months and 5 months.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds right. That sounds
Okay.
fair.
Yeah, but I think if you have 8 strict pull-ups, I would first get you to 10. I would
Mm-hmm.
say first get to 10. And then we would give you the right drills, which are negative muscle ups on the rings, muscle ups with a band, on the rings, learning how to tie your band to the rings, putting it like either, under your butt or in your knees, and learning how to muscle up, learning how to false grip, and these certain like transitional drills that you could do. Because there's a lot of drills that you could do, and you could probably get it in a month.
Yeah, the right way, right? This
Yeah,
is what you
yeah.
talked about.
Well, I mean, one of the right ways at least, like utilizing the most tools that you could.
Okay, and when you talk about unlocking a movement, is it like you got the thing and now you just passed a threshold and now you just can do the planche forever? And I'm asking this because, I got a muscle up and then the next couple 3 days later I did not have a muscle up and then a week later I did have a muscle up and then not and then not. It's not like I
Uh-huh.
just figured it out and suddenly I can do it.
You had it forever. Yeah, fair enough. Um, Definitely a lot of these skills, it's a use it or lose it type situation. Uh, I mean, obviously, you will get them back faster than you got them the first time, but if you're not doing them regularly, they're going to dwindle away. Like if I don't planche for a month, I go from being able to hold a planche for 10 seconds to being able to hold a planche for 1 second. If I don't do it at all for a month, versus it depends on the skill, but I would say the sweet spot for me is twice a week is barely maintenance. Like you're barely kind of keeping your skill. 3 times a week, you're properly like maintaining it. 4 times a week, you're making gains. 5 times a week, you're like actually seeing progress. Anything under 2 times a week, and you're actually losing from the skills you have. Um, you know,
Yeah.
um, uh, so unlock is like, okay, I did it for the first time, but yeah, if you don't keep getting after it, you're not gonna like forever have it. But also that, implies a certain understanding of kind of adaptation periods and your body and like conditioning and like you can't also if you unlocked your first muscle up, you can't go hammering away muscle ups the first week just every day. You're gonna mash your shit up and it's gonna hurt, you know. So
Indeed.
there's so there's like a certain level of, I guess, of understanding of like adaptation periods and your body and your tendons and so on and so
Yeah, that's
forth.
another thing. It feels like calisthenics is always full body. You can kind of separate push pull, but it seems like that's not as useful as doing total body every time you train. How do you handle that?
Um, so this is interesting. Yeah, like a lot of the stuff I do is very compound. Like I guess once you get more advanced, once you get past that level 0, where it's like pull-ups is a pull and then push-ups is a push, and um um you start using like don't get me wrong, push-ups and pull-ups are compound movements, but they kind of isolate your pushing and your pulling. But muscle ups is both. It's a pull and a push.
Right.
You know, so I would say I don't really look at it in terms of push, pull, anything like that. I just do my The only thing that's separate from calisthenics for me is legs. I feel like calisthenics is not enough to build big legs for sure. It's enough to build strong legs. Like I've seen, that's just my opinion. Controversial. Some people might be like, no, screw you. We only do calisthenics.
The leg
Um,
police, they're gonna come after you.
I know, dude. And I'm fully like honest and transparent about it. For the first few years that I did calisthenics, I did not touch a single weight with my legs, and I didn't do that much legs. I just did anything that made me better at calisthenics. I did a lot of glutes because you use your glutes, but not really any quads or hamstrings or calves or anything like that. And but I did do a lot of body weight stuff. Like I learned how to flip and I would run and jump and do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But recently, at the beginning of 2023, or actually end of 2022, I kind of set out on a mission to like I wanted to grow my legs, I wanted to squat, I wanted to hit certain
Ooh.
numbers. Yeah, it was
Nice.
great. I did that all of winter. I was squatting twice a week. I got pretty good at it. I had to work a lot on my technique. Hit the numbers I want to hit, grew my legs. I was filling my shorts out. It was wonderful, but I lost so much calisthenic strength. Like
Well,
it
now
was
you got to get
crazy.
those legs over the bar. Geez, that's so much more
Uh-huh.
weight to put to muscle up.
You're
It's
hauling around those
crazy.
huge quads.
Yeah, dude, it's crazy. Like once you build some trunks, you got to be able to lift them up. Um, and um, and so, I did that all of winter, and then summer came, and I was like, okay, like I'm going back outside. I want to train outside. So I want to get strong at calisthenics again. So I had to find that nice little medium where I hit my legs like once a week with the weights. And the rest of the time I'm just training my calisthenics and I do like body weight leg stuff. But I got a little on a tangent. But what I'm trying to say is, no, I don't really push pull. I don't really
Push pull, yeah,
split
yeah,
like
split.
that. I usually train the same skills almost every day at this point where I'm
What?
at. Um, yeah,
You're
so
recovering that quickly?
so here's I'm gonna okay, cool. Let's get into that. That's
Let's
actually
get
a great
into
one. So I am very much so a volume and frequency versus intensity guy, and I've developed
Hmm.
that over years to where I will train like 6 days a week,
Rough.
60%.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
I'll cap myself at if I get carried away 70. If I get carried away, like I'm walking out of the gym at a 70% exertion rate with 30% left in the tank. If I were to go to 80, 90, 100, I would never be able to train this frequently. So I keep it in the 60 to 70 range so that I could go over time. And what happens is I end up banking a lot more volume over time than say if I were doing 100% 3 times a week, right? If I were doing 100% 3 times a week, I'd be doing 300% at the end of the week. If I'm doing 70% 6 times a week, you do the math on that, and that's 420. That's 420% by the end of the week. And so it's a numbers game. I end up getting way more volume at the end of the week and then at the end of the month and then at the end of the year. And my 70% keeps evolving. Like my 70% 2 years ago was
Mhm.
me doing like a certain amount of sets, a certain amount of reps. My 70% today is much better than that, but it's still 70. The only time I'll ever go to 100 is if I'm like dead set on hitting like a certain PR, or if I'm if I'm dead set, excuse me, if I'm dead set on hitting like a certain PR, or if I'm competing.
Makes sense.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really see kind of the benefit in going to 100. I think it doesn't allow you to train as frequently, and I'm someone who I just love training. I want to
Yeah.
train every day. Like I love getting up,
Yeah.
getting after it, being hyped up. And then it also you get weight like you get into injury territory when you get to like 80%, you know?
I was just gonna say, so you've never been injured.
No, no, no. I have. This comes
Okay,
from someone
okay,
who's been majorly injured. This comes from
okay.
someone who like came with just the wrong mindset into fitness of just get everything and just killing myself and so on and so forth. That's kind of what made me this way. Like I end up getting hurt so many times. I had a huge injury in 2020.
Yeah.
The biggest, it was like a kind of career-ending injury for a lot of people. I tore my bicep, my distal bicep tendon right here,
Oh,
um, and like my bicep just completely tore, and I had to get it surgically repaired. And everyone was like, "Okay, he's done," and I wasn't done. So I came back from that. It was a great comeback, and I'm very proud of it because I've used it to like motivate a lot of other people in calisthenics to either not get injured or come back from their injuries. But that being said, I've kind of had to figure it out, right? Like that's the biggest problem with calisthenics that a lot of people don't talk about, is because it's so accessible and you see everything on social media and this information is out there on how to do these skills, but there's not enough like warnings, like, listen, bro, you're going to go out and do this stuff on your own. You're going to be in the park alone, just watching these videos, trying to do this with no real understanding of adaptation periods, like conditioning, tendons, joints, rest times, deload, like all that stuff that you kind of need to figure out. So yeah, no, I feel like since I've implemented this way of being that has come through difficult times, I've been relatively healthy. I just got to be strict with myself and not get too carried away.
You're gonna hold yourself back from trying harder.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like once I'm like, okay, like I can tell I'm gassed, like a little bit gassed, there's no point. Let me pack it up and come back tomorrow. I'm not going anywhere,
That's I've heard of a couple people seriously hurting themselves, and I don't think that's just calisthenics. I think it's a lot of sports. I know a couple of skiers who have messed themselves up pretty bad because they're like, oh, I'll just do one more. I'll do one more run today. I bought the lift ticket, I might as well. And then that's the one that they, knock on wood, shatter their ankle or knee or whatever on it. I think that's a very sort of smart and mature way of approaching athletics, wouldn't you say, Allie?
How do you know where 70% is? I may have been at 70% my whole life. I don't even know what 100 is.
Sure, you gotta try. Sure.
Sometimes
you learn to gauge it, and it's good. It's good to it's good to figure out what your 100 is, right? Like, and just like even injuries aside, I truly believe you'll make more gains, right? Like, so let's say your 100% is 10 pull-ups, and you want to get to your PR, which is 12, right? You want 12. That's what you want. Instead of coming into the gym and do it, you're not going to be able to do 10. If 10 is your true max, you will not be able to do 10 every day. That's impossible, because it's not if you could do it every day, it's not your true max. So 10 is your 100, right? I would say come in the gym every day and do 7. Every single day you do 7. And then next week you do 8. And that 8 will now become your new 70%. Does that make sense? And then the week after, do 9. And that 9 will become your new 70%. And then all of a sudden, you're still doing 70, but you're doing 10, which was your 100 4 weeks ago, right? It's like a theoretical example, but that's kind of how the system works. And then eventually you come to try your PR and you haven't hurt yourself, you haven't overexerted yourself, and all of a sudden you can do 12 or even 13, So it's a cool way of training. You could try it.
Definitely.
Yeah. I'm sure. Well, do you think your body has gotten better at recovering because it knows you're training every day, and it's gonna come the next day and you wake up less sore and your body sort of gets used to it?
Yeah, it's a mixture of things. I think it's definitely keeping it in its sweet spot, like not getting it to the point where it's just gonna wake up with DOMS or like soreness or whatever. Just kind of keeping it right under that threshold. Caring about it a little more. Like, dude, I used to sleep at 3 a.m., wake up at whatever time. And now it's like, no, like midnight hits and I'm brushing my teeth and I'm going to bed. And eating, I used to eat whatever, and if I'm craving this type of sweet or this type of thing, I'd eat that. And now it's like, no, you have fruits and cottage cheese in the fridge. You bought some oatmeal, like make that in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, instead of like just eating a little bit better. I'm not, I don't know. I'm not a diet guy. I'm not a nutrition guy, but I know, eating a little bit better than what I used to eat has helped a lot. Let me think. It's a combination of stuff. Yeah, keeping it at that 70, eating good, sleeping good, knowing when to rest. Like I don't train, you know what I mean? Like there's times where I wake up and I'm like, yeah, I'm not training today. Like I can, I need this time. Or even like a
Mm.
deload week. Like people sleep on the power of just like, sticking with a program, let's say for 8 weeks, and then taking 1 week where you just do like 50% of everything you've been doing, like a deload week, like a proper
Mhm.
deload week.
Sure. And about how
So
often are you doing that? Like every, or is that
intuitive.
metaphorical? Okay.
No, no,
Yeah.
it's intuitive. Like I'm not, dude. If there's anything I've learned, um, is that a flexible plan is the best. Like anytime I sit down and I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do this every day for the next 8 weeks, and it just does not work out. But
Mm.
this whole plug and play system of like, okay, this is what I gotta get done during the week. Just plug and play intuitively how you feel, just get it done. And this is, how much I need to rest, just plug that in when it needs to happen. That has worked a lot better for me than these like rigid plans.
I hate even to ask because it's such a downer. Do you
Go
stretch at all?
ahead. So my girlfriend Lucy is a yoga teacher and a massage therapist. So
Oh
I'm
boy.
blessed
Okay.
blessed
Okay.
What the
with
heck?
that.
I gotta get one of those.
Yeah, right. So that's like a huge blessing, but it's also like a pain sometimes because she's like on me about being on that stuff, and like when I'm not, she's like disappointed, and it like leaks into like our everyday life,
Aw, that's cute.
so yeah, so I try, let's say that I try, like I do stretch, but not nearly enough, not nearly. I'm terrible at it. It's not, I don't find it fun. I hate every second of it. But I do it. I do it, and I've progressively done it a little bit more as time has gone on, but definitely touchy subject, definitely not nearly as much as I should.
Do you find it something that'll help you with your actual calisthenic movements, or is it more just help you with recovery?
It just
Something else?
keep me loose,
Yeah.
honestly. Like not necessarily like there's like the calisthenics, I wouldn't call it flexibility, it's mobility that you need for calisthenics. So you need to kind of have these ranges of motion,
Mhm.
but under tension. So like
Mm.
passively stretching them doesn't do that much. So like just today I was talking to someone at the gym and they were like, "Oh, I'm always doing this one because I want to open my shoulder for handstands." And I'm like, "No, like you need to like grab a weight and crank it back because you need to like open it up with tension, not with like this passive."
Mhm.
So it doesn't really, I mean, I'm sure it helps somewhere, but I do it to stay loose because I realize that this calisthenic stuff will stiffen you up a lot. And dude, like I used to think that being strong is like I'm 30 now. I'm not, very old by any means, but I used to think like being strong is what being youthful meant. But I realize now that actually like flexibility makes me feel a lot more youthful than like strength, you know?
Oh yeah.
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 Yeah,
Or just the lack thereof. Like
yeah.
whenever I make a sound because I'm getting off the couch, that's when I feel very old or you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like not being able to put
exactly.
my socks on. I'm like, okay, all right, chill out. You're not 105. Like you could
Exactly, dude. Like stiffness just like makes you feel old.
Yeah.
And I don't like that feeling too much,
And how do you plan on your calisthenics into the future as you age? Are you thinking about that? When you're 50, what do
um
you want to be doing calisthenics wise?
dude, so I recently have been getting really like, I mean, I'll always do calisthenics. I love it. It's at this point it's more so like I don't even do it competitively anymore. I just do it because I'm into it. Like I'm genuinely into seeing like what I can do with my body, where how I can push, how I can leverage, how I
Yep.
can figure out all these like weird, interesting things between my body and physics. But I also have a bunch of other sports that I'm, into. Like I'm really into cliff jumping. And that's kind of been growing on me a lot. And I've been getting after it. Like this summer, I got after it pretty hard. Um, so I feel like I'll just continue to kind of be this hybrid athlete who does like calisthenics is more just my practice. It's like people do yoga, I'll train my calisthenics, might even get into some more yoga. Um, just,
That
I
peer
don't,
pressure.
yeah, right. Um, I don't really know exactly. I just know that I'm going, I'm definitely going to keep doing it, and going with it and everything else. Yeah.
Would you ever go back to Muay Thai, or is your ankle still preventing you?
I mean, I'd go back for fun.
Mm.
I'd go back just to refresh myself and maybe get in the ring and have a little bit of fun, but not anything too serious. I can't really check kicks properly anymore with my left, so for fun. I have one of my friends actually is so he was the featherweight world champion at calisthenics, and he's transitioned into this whole influencer boxing thing that's going on now.
Oh boy.
And yeah, and he's really into it, and he's like, dude, we can get you a fight, blah blah blah. And I was like, maybe, I don't know. I'm not I'm not really a fighter at heart. I'm even, as I've grown old, I've realized like I'm not even competitively motivated at all. Like I'm more creatively motivated. That's why I'm really into the videos and stuff these days, is because I just like the creative aspect of like what can I do with my body? Like what kind of cool video can I make? What kind of impact can I have on people? Like that's what's fulfilled me the most, as of recent, is just trying to impact other people and kind of share the whole like, dude, if I could do it, you could do it too. Like I was by no means a phenom of an athlete at all. I was like just like a you know very normal or a little bit abnormal kid. And I managed to do this. Um, you know, like I feel like that part of things is a little cooler. It hypes me up a little bit more. So that's kind of the path I'm going down.
Yeah, you kind of mentioned the transition, or you've seen the community evolve, and when you first started, there wasn't stuff on the internet, and now it
Mm.
seems like, well, it seems like everywhere for me because I'm in an echo chamber, but there it's now accessible. People are talking to each other online. I kind of want to dive into that. I'm imagining you're thinking it's positive, but I also wonder, like back in the day, you would just be at your local park and you could be the best person at your park doing some cool stuff, and you're compared to all your park buddies. Now you are compared to everyone else on the internet. And so how does that feel to you, that we're all competing to be number one and everyone's looking at everyone and the best are out there, making
uh,
people just start feel really bad?
uh, it's that's an interesting one. I've never really like put that into words and actually given that thought the attention it deserves. Let me think about that. I mean, it's good and it's bad, right? Like there's a lot more information out there. People can learn how to do things properly. That's kind of goes back to what I was saying about this feeling like the sport is kind of in its teen years. Because it went from being this very innocent thing. Like people were just hyped up on bars and like doing this cool stuff on bars, and everyone was trying to help each other out. And now everyone is like either the best or they're teaching this, and then these other people are teaching that, and everyone's like kind of critic. Like if you look at the fabric of the community, there's a lot of people criticizing other people and a lot of people competing with other people, because people know a little bit more than they used to. um, but that's for me is just a phase. I think as the sport matures, you'll realize that there's just so much facets and there's so much room in the sport and there's just so many levels. And there's just enough room for everyone. And it's like I would tend to look at it like a bigger sport, right? Like how many people play basketball, right? No one's looking at LeBron and being like, "Oh, I'm not as good as him," or you know what I mean? Like with time, I think it'll find itself. I'm not gonna, pretend to have like real answers about that. Um, I think for myself at least, like I've learned from a lot of people in other sports, and being here in LA and kind of starting to grow my social media, I've come across other people who have gotten very far in their respective sports, and you learn to kind of identify that, yeah, some people are kind of stuck in that loop of comparing themselves to others and this and that. But then there's other people and even other creators that aren't even playing that game. Like it's just more either content to teach other people how to do things, or content to motivate other people to do things, or just creative, interesting content, right? Because it's very, I don't want to, like, I don't mean this at all in a rude way, but it lacks maturity when the sport is very unilateral and it's just like, oh, he did 3 seconds of this, so to be better I have to do five, or he did 10 reps of this, so to be better I have to do 15. Like that is kind of a very unilateral way of looking at things, and it applies to certain sports. But for a freestyle sport like this, it's like that's just, the vertical plane, but there's such a big horizontal plane, which is he did this with this type of style, or with this type of form, or with this, and or she did this like that. And so there's like all this creative space to work around. So I try to not look at it as this numbers game. So for example, in freestyle, right, you're judging people. And for the longest time, it was like, oh, he did 360s and he did four. So Mr. Four wins. But it's like, no, dude, like look at snowboarding or skiing, right? Like you could do a 360 in like 10 different ways. You could grab your legs behind your back, you could arch your back, you could round your back. So style, I just think there's a lot of layers, and I think as the sport matures, it will become less competitive, maybe a little more creative, and maybe that'll feed into the competitiveness. I don't know, but I feel like there's a healthy competitive and an unhealthy competitive. I don't know.
That is a great answer.
Amazing. Yeah.
Wow.
Incredible.
So then I guess you're probably a big fan of these silly internet challenges. I shouldn't say silly because lots of them are so impressive, but just like unconventional things where people are doing. My best friend called them stupid human tricks because I told her I was getting a muscle up, and she's like, "Oh, you're working on a stupid human trick, are you?" Yeah, I don't know. I'm guessing you're into that kind of thing where people are just being, doing internet crazy.
That's funny you say that, because there was recently a video on my page that caught the bug, went viral, um, off of me doing some crazy internet tricks and falling on top of a friend of mine who we were trying to do a trick together.
I saw that one. That
And
one was tough.
yeah, it's funny because
Tough.
I dropped two posts basically back to back. I dropped that one, and then I dropped a video right after that was like my story, and they both caught on, and I was getting comments like on comments on comments on comments, and one of them was like literally just people were saying the most hateful things on that crazy or stupid
Ugh.
internet stuff that you're talking about. Like, dude, people were saying shit like, "Oh, I'm glad you fell. I hope that hurt. I hope you." And I was just like, "Oh," I just didn't reply to anything. And on the other post, people were like, "Oh my god, thank you so much for posting this. Like, this motivated me so much."
Oh
Blah
my
blah blah.
God.
So it was interesting to see the contrast of people on the internet and how people like to interact with other humans, through their thumb devices. Um, but that being said,
Uh,
um, I like it. I think it's art, dude. Like you ever go to the circus? And that's the thing. Like when it's in the setting of a circus, when it's in the setting of a performance or Cirque du Soleil or whatever it is, people are with it. People pay $500 to go watch Cirque du Soleil, you know? But sometimes on the internet, like people call it stupid or whatever. I try to block all that out. I'm into doing cool creative shit. Yes. If that's what you're asking, yes, I'm super with it. Even if it's like someone handstanding on someone else's hands with the risk of falling and busting their face, I'm with it because I think that stuff is really cool. I think like doing creative stuff with the human body is a great way to spend one's time. It's a fun activity. For me, it's a win-win. Like it makes me feel good and it's good for me and it's fun. Unlike all the stuff that I used to do with my life, which is like get fucked up and then that feels good, but it's terrible for me. This stuff feels good and it's good for me. Like it makes me stronger and more coordinated and so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm with it. I think it's cool. I think I don't know, maybe you asked me a couple years ago, I'd be like, oh, some risks are a little unnecessary. But as I get more in the space and I like get better at it and get more skilled, I realize that everything is subjective. And, to a certain person, like jumping off a 80-foot cliff is the dumbest thing on earth. And to someone else who's like built their way up to 80 over time with reps and technique and training in the gym, so on and so forth, it's actually a great idea and it's really cool. So, I think to each their own.
Sounds like an incredibly healthy way to look at it. Okay, so if our Fithead listeners want to go find you on the internet, where should they go?
They can go to Nick. So on Instagram, on TikTok, and on YouTube, I'm at Nicky NICKY .LYAN. Lyan. That's my last name. You can find me on all socials at Nicky Lyan. And yeah, feel free to drop me a DM, especially if you're like learning calisthenics. I try to answer everyone. Like obviously as the community grows and the people who support my page grow, it gets a little more difficult, but I still try to get to everyone because I'm not like I live in LA, but I'm not with that whole like, oh, I'm on social media. I don't, I'm more important than you. No, like we're all people. I feel like I was guided and helped by people who I looked up to a lot when I first started. So it's only right for me to like just keep doing that as long as I possibly can. So I'm here to help if you are learning calisthenics, you need some advice, or if you're going through a tough time, I'll try to help. Thank you guys for having me on your podcast.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you so much. This was fantastic. And thank you to the Fitheads. If you can rate and review on Apple Podcasts, that helps us out a whole lot. And we'll see you next week.
Yep. Later, Fitheads.